So compared to UIKit, the older way of building apps for iOS, what would you say there are certain types of designs that SwiftUI make easier to do than UIKit would have done?
I think it's easier to do custom designs for sure, just because there's very little cost to changing the layout to maintain the layout. If you think about UIKit, for example, you have to use constraints, and constraints are extremely hard for anyone, not just for designers, but also for developers. And I feel for developers because in the design tool now, we are using constraints, and a lot of designers have trouble with that. Imagine in the design tool having trouble with constraints, being the person who designed the layout themselves, having trouble with constraints. And as we all know, in UIKit is like 10x that complexity of what you can find in Figma or in Sketch. In Figma and Sketch, you only have like, oh, you can go from top, from the left. You don't even have specific units for those distances. It's just, hey, I want to, do a constraint from the top, from the left, and whatever distance that I already have right now, it's just going to stick to it. But in UIKit, it's like much more complex. You can sort of like set constraints between two elements. You can align them with each other. You can set a priority, of constraints, and then you have like fixing constraints. You have stacks that comes along with it. So it's very complex, even for a designer. Now, the reason why I say I feel for developers, because developers are not necessarily the one who created the layout. And as someone who didn't create a layout, to have to go into the constraint mode, which is a very mental model for a designer, is very difficult, right? Like for me as a designer, I created a layout, so I understand everything, every bits and pieces, all the distances, all the paddings. And when I go to storyboard, I understand how to set up the constraints. But having someone else do it for me, I feel for that person, which is why I feel like it's very difficult. Now, compared to auto layout, well, not auto layout, I mean Figma's auto layout, which is comparable to stacks in SwiftUI, it's extremely easy for anyone to set up stacks. Okay, it's you just select a bunch of elements, put them into stacks, set the distances. Everyone can understand that, right? And you're not going to have conflicts. You're not going to have to maintain it as much. And it's like SwiftUI was made to be adaptive from the beginning. And that, I think, is a very powerful concept versus UIKit. When it was invented, we had very few screens at the time. And I think it started like even at 1x screen in terms of resolution. So the way that you have to set up your mind to think about those layouts is very different from the way that we have to think about layouts nowadays, just because of sheer amount of devices out there.